Can we ask you to come up and testify from one of the members? For some reason, they're not here with the microphones, and maybe by the time I finish, they'll be here. But I want to. Some people have come in from out of town, and I want to make sure that we move along. The hearing will come to order, and as I wait for the witness to come up, I'll make my opening statement. It has almost been 1 year ago that on New Year's Eve, a suicide bomber killed 21 worshipers as they were leaving services at a Coptic Christian church in Alexandria, Egypt. The attack was the worst incidence of violence against Egypt's Coptic minority in a decade, until early this October, when at least 22 were killed in Cairo during clashes between military police and Coptic Christians who had gathered to protest the burning of a church. These are just two of the most high-profile cases of persecution of Coptic Christians. There are countless other examples of violence, discrimination, and incitement, all of which only intensified since the fall of the Mubarak regime. The targeting of Christians in the Middle East, notably in Iraq, has driven many to flee the lands they have inhabited for centuries. In fact, centuries. Keep in mind, St. Mark evangelized Egypt for centuries and attempt to emigrate now to the West. There is a historical parallel here which bears mentioning. I submit for the record a September 17th piece from the Wall Street Journal, very powerful piece, written by a reporter with the journal who is Jewish and an Egyptian American. She writes movingly of her own family's experience in Egypt after Nasser came to power and made it clear that there was room for, quote, outsiders. She describes how the once flourishing Jewish community, numbering roughly 80,000, left in droves. Her personal account is consistent with the State Department's recently released annual report on international religious freedom, which estimates that, quote, the country's Jewish community numbers approximately 125 persons, end of quote. In short, in the last 50-plus years, Egypt has effectively emptied the country of the Jewish population. And I fear the same fate may await the Coptic Christians if things are not changed. The dwindling Christian population throughout the region has serious implications for the prospects of pluralism and tolerance in that part of the world. In light of these realities, I've been working along with my colleague Anna Eshu on legislation that would create a special envoy position at the State Department to focus specifically on the challenges facing religious minorities throughout the Middle East. It was actually a recommendation of one of the witnesses today. That bill passed the House overwhelmingly, and one senator has it blocked in the Senate. This envoy would advocate on their behalf with foreign governments and within our own government, and would develop policy recommendations to ensure their survival. This bill, H.R. 440, overwhelmingly passed the House on July 29th, 402 to 20, with 80 co-sponsors at the time of the passage. It's now languishing in the Senate as a result of an anonymous one senator. The same is true of a bipartisan legislation passed earlier this fall, H.R. 2867, to reauthorize the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. The Commission is a reliable voice for persecuted people of faith. While the Senate drags its feet, religious freedom is under assault globally and in Egypt and in particular, and one senator has a hold on that bill in the Senate. We have a moral obligation to do everything in our power to prevent the extinction of Christians in Egypt. I was in Egypt in late June of this year, where I met with various government officials, NGO, and activists. Coptic Christians told me that they feared sectarian violence and were concerned about continued discrimination in government hiring and building churches. They also really fundamentally have almost no confidence in the American embassy. They do not view the American embassy as an island of freedom. They almost view it as kind of a neutral place, or maybe one that they have to be careful to even be involved with. I came away with a number of broad-based policy recommendations, one very important one being that the U.S. must seriously consider conditioning foreign assistance, specifically military assistance, to Egypt. Each year, the United States gives Egypt approximately $1.4 billion in foreign military assistance with no strings attached. No strings attached. We must leverage this assistance, especially as Egypt transitions. We must make it clear that any future military assistance to Egypt will be conditioned upon the government respecting and upholding universally recognized human rights norms. This message is of the utmost importance as Egypt looks toward drafting a new constitution following the elections. And not only are the Coptic Christians having a difficult time, we met with the Baha'i community. They're having a very difficult time. The Ahmadis are having a very, very difficult time. I believe that we have a moral obligation to be a voice for the voiceless, and this administration and this Congress must find its voice for the beleaguered Copts and other religious minorities, lest the Arab Spring devolve into an Arab winter with lasting implications the world over, and lasting implications that I think many people know could come but are not talking about it. Again, I want to thank everyone for being here, and I recognize Chairman Mr. McGovern.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everybody. I want to thank everyone for attending this important hearing on Coptic Christians in Egypt and the growing threats to their religious freedom. I would especially like to thank my fellow co-chair Frank Wolf, as well as the staff of the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission for organizing this briefing. I think it's timely. During the Mubarak regime, Coptic Christians faced discrimination not only from extreme Islamic groups, but also by the government itself. In its most recent International Religious Freedom Report, the U.S. State Department found that the former Egyptian government continually failed to redress violence perpetrated against Coptic Christians and indeed appeared to condone such violence. Coptic Christians also face discrimination in employment, religious practice, and the construction of churches. Following the fall of the Mubarak regime, the plight of Coptic Christians has worsened despite their role in helping to oust Mubarak from power. Scores of Christians have been killed in deadly confrontations. According to some reports, Egyptian security forces have themselves attacked Coptic Christians. In addition, Coptic Christians continue to face employment discrimination and legal obstacles when it comes to building churches or obtaining legal recognition for their conversion. With the Islamic victories in recent elections and expectations that Islamists will continue to win seats in subsequent rounds of Egypt's parliamentary elections, the future for human rights of Coptic Christians is uncertain. These electoral gains raise serious concerns as to whether the Egyptian government will uphold its commitment under its own laws and international human rights obligations to respect the freedom of religion and conscience. Today, we look forward to hearing from 6 distinguished panelists who will discuss the plight of Egyptian Coptic Christians and what impact Egypt's elections might have on them. On behalf of the Commission, I want to thank all the witnesses for being here. Again, I especially want to thank my colleague Frank Wolf for arranging this hearing. And our goal here is to raise awareness and to hopefully compel the Egyptian government as it develops to respect the rights and freedoms of all people, including Coptic Christians. And with that, I yield back my time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Pitts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this critical hearing. Congress has conducted multiple hearings on the topic of the plight of Egypt's Coptic community. And unfortunately, it appears as though, despite our prolonged attention to this issue and our efforts to highlight human rights violations, conditions continue to worsen. Over the last 10 months since the revolution began, members of Congress have stressed the need for the Copts' greater security and equal protection under the law with our State Department and with SCAF directly. Clearly, as attacks against the Coptic community continue with impunity, our government must reevaluate our policies, given the severity of the situation. The situation that the Copts face is dire. After suffering continued attacks, they now face a future parliament dominated by Muslim extremists and hardliners. Furthermore, the current military leadership has indicated that they may stack the panel members tasked with drafting a new constitution. Given the history of the SCAF's concern for minority rights and religious freedom, the window for establishing security and protection for the Copts and their rightful place in Egyptian society may be slipping away. The administration must act now before it is too late. Every attack that occurs without prosecution brings Egypt further away from any true sense of democracy. Any government that is established as blood runs through the streets and vast segments of the population are marginalized cannot bring a full sense of legitimacy when tasked with fulfilling its duties to its people. Mr. Chairman, I look forward to hearing from our witnesses today and to the testimony that they will share, particularly with the actions of our State Department. I believe the need to reassess our policies is apparent, given our support of the ruling government. Thank you, and I yield back.